good morning. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching the F&O Show on BloombergQuint Live, India's first digital live streaming business news service. I'm Navneet Saluja D'Souza.
Good morning, Navneet. I'm Agam Vakil. Let's take a look at the headlines. Markets begin the weekly options expiry on a subdued note. The Nifty remains around 12,150. Equitas and L&T Finance is seeing a rise in open interest towards fresh longs. Bharti Airtel is a top Nifty loser after it approved a $3 billion fundraise through a combination of debt and equity. And the Monetary Policy Committee is expected to announce another rate cut today. A majority of economists polled by Bloomberg expect a 25 basis point cut in the repo rates.
Okay, those are your top headlines at this hour. Let's quickly tell you what's happening with the markets right now. Of course, it's an important day. We've got the monetary policy where the street is factoring in a 25 basis point rate cut. But if anything above that comes in, maybe we could see wild reaction on back of that. But also remember, today's Thursday, so you've got the weekly options expiry day, on back of which volatility, at least in the first hour of trade, has been on the higher side. And the benchmarks right now trading with gains. Nifty maintaining those levels of 12,050. Sensex also sitting with gains for about closer to 100 points. And Bank Nifty, rate sensitive, will be in focus on back of monetary policy, trading above the mark of 32,000. And the technical analysts have been mentioning that the first resistance for this one will be coming around the mark of 32,200. Pull up the India Volatility Index. After correcting nearly 8% in yesterday's trade, it's spiked again today, considering we've got events lined up. So that's trading with gains of 7%. And from the broader market perspective, you've got the mid-cap as well as the small-cap indices, which are just about holding up in the green, while the market breadth, which gives you a better picture of the entire listed universe, is looking better today. So that's in favor of the advances. Nearly the ratio seems to be 1:1 though. Okay, in terms of options data, then what to expect? 12,100 call continues to be the strike with maximum open interest. And on the put side, of course, it's the 12,000 strike. So the range is once again very narrow, which we've been mentioning throughout this week, 12,000 to 12,100. We defended 20 DMA twice in yesterday's session. There was buying emerging around the mark of 11,950. What you're seeing today is more call riding around the mark of 12,100. Almost 12 lakh shares have been added there, while the 12,000 put has added nearly 10 lakh shares. So 12,000 will be a crucial support to watch out for, while on the upside 12,100 will be a resistance. If we cross that mark, your all-time high levels of 12,158, I think that will be in focus. But talking about the FI data, however, there was a last hour recovery coming in yesterday. FI has continued to sell in the cash segment, and alongside that, they've been creating more short positions on index futures. If you compare the long ratio now it stands at 47% versus 61%, which was there at the start of the series last Friday.
Well, that's right. Well, that's as far as your benchmark indices go, but let's talk about stocks, which are also in focus in today's day of trade. And there are plenty of them out there which are looking at an increase in open interest and a lot of buying traction actually coming along. So, HCL Technologies is a curious one, but that is because of the bonus which is coming through. So if you have to disregard HCL Technologies, which is right at the top of that list, but if you leave that aside, that corporate action, we have Just Dial, which is seeing 12% increase in OI. We have Interglobe Aviation, which is actually looking at a decline of around 3%. That is seeing about 11% increase in OI. Equitas Holding is seeing an up move around 2%, longs building in there, and Mindtree is the other one where we're looking at just a little bit of a decline after the kind of strength that we saw in the company yesterday. What about stocks which are seeing unwinding? Let's take a look at that as well. Some pretty interesting ones. Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea are seeing unwinding coming through, and longs taken earlier, which are coming off. And Hero MotoCorp is looking at an up move around 1.3%. So that is also looking at some gains there. So keep an eye on that one. Short covering coming through. But what else are we keeping an eye on, Navneet?
Well, a lot of stocks that we want to discuss with our experts today, and of course on top of the list has to be Reliance Industries. Remember, it ended off day's low yesterday, but the stock was still down 1.5%. It snapped the two-day fall after the news came in that the company will be increasing tariffs with effect from tomorrow. The blended hike is somewhere about 28%, and of course you've got CLSA on back of that rate hike which has come in. They've increased the target price to 2,000 rupees. Ujjivan Financial, its small finance bank IPO closed yesterday. yesterday, and the subscription numbers looked pretty encouraging, 170 times, and the stock yesterday was also up about 4%. We are witnessing fresh longs even in today's trade. We've not been discussing Titan for a really long time, but this one's been moving higher, though it's taking baby steps. The stock's been up for the third straight day today, and now it trades above its 200 and 100-day moving average.
Very interesting moves coming in from Titan. We'll talk about all these, and it's time to get in our experts for today. But before that, here's a reminder. If you have any queries regarding futures and options markets, you can call us on 022-454-04141. Of course, write to us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube with the #AskPQ hashtag. Today we have with us Ashish Chaturmohta of Sanctum Wealth and Nirav Chheda of Nirmal Bank Securities joining us on the show. Good morning to both of you, and thanks for taking the time out. Ashish, let's start with the Nifty. Where do we go from here? More strength in store?
So I think, after some last 3-4 days of sideways correction or maybe some consolidation, again markets are showing good traction. I think now base is very clear around 12,000. You have a very strong support in the market. Until 12,000 levels are not broken, I think upside towards 12,200, 250 could not be ruled out. So expecting at least 150-200 points rally from current levels at an index level. And I think to contribute that, you are seeing a lot of this IT names supporting this up. Most of today TCS, Infosys, Tech Mahindra are in a strong traction. We have names from the private sector banking basket. ICICI Bank, Kotak Mahindra Bank are in a strong traction, and even PSU Bank, State Bank is also contributing to the rally. Reliance, I think after some consolidation, is also showing signs of strength. So here some contribution can come from Reliance. So all put together, I think keep 12,000 as in stop loss. 12,200, 250 could be a short-term target in Nifty.
Okay, so that's a positive stance coming in on the index. Let's go across to Nirav and take his views as well. Hi Nirav, good morning. At current levels now of about 12,050 or 60, would you advise taking any fresh long position?
Yeah, see, definitely the view is long. See, as I've been saying, I've been repeating this all throughout, the open interest is very low on index, especially on Nifty. So, with this open interest, it really rules out a big possibility of a fall. So if at all the fall comes, you can get about 150-200 points of fall. You should be buying into it, and you'll see a V-shaped recovery, and Nifty might just break all its levels going up towards the 12,300 odd levels. Now, would I be buying at current levels? The answer is, I'll be waiting for the policy today. There's definitely going to be volatility there. Every time the policy comes, you're seeing moves on both sides. And, I'll be waiting for a downside of about 12,050, 12,020 odd on the futures to add on to positions. And, buying on dips is far better at this point of time. My stop loss would be 11,970. See, that level hasn't been broken. It hasn't been broken on a closing basis as well. So again, until that, until Nifty closes below the 11,970 odd levels, I'll be definitely a buyer. That will be my stop loss, and my target would be around 12,250, 12,300 odd. Another thing to note is the VIX has really dramatically fallen from the 16-17 levels. 6 months it consolidated in between 15 and 18, and then to come down is a very good sign for the market. It does show that market is now ready for the next leg of the up move, and probably that can start after today's policy.
Okay, so, well, of course, the policy will be a key watchable, and there's no doubt about that. And for now, let me point out that the VIX is up 8%, and it's currently at 14.3. It's nowhere close to the levels of 15, 16 that we have been used to when markets turn to volatile. That said, we're seeing an advance of around 8%, but this may largely very well be because of, well, an event lined up, But let's talk about stocks then. And Ashish, what's looking good to you?
Hi, so I think 2-3 names which are gaining very good traction. First one is Tata Elxsi. This stock has formed a strong base and now on the verge of a strong breakout on weekly chart. So here one can expect up move extending towards 860, 865 zone. So one can initiate a long with a stop around 810, 855, 860 could be a short-term target. Bata is one stock which is looking very promising after a consolidation. Here also some strong uptick could be witnessed. So one can initiate a long, keeping 1665 as in trading stop loss. 1745 would be my short-term target in Bata. And Divi's Lab from the pharma basket is in a very, very strong consolidation phase after 8 months of breakout. So maybe some sideways trend being witnessed here, but I think the structure is quite promising. The data setup, the build-up of positions is quite encouraging. So keeping this in mind, 1775 would be my trading stop loss. 1870 is a short-term target in Divi's Lab as well.
All right, so 3 long calls coming in from Ashish, Tata Elxsi, Bata, as well as Divi's Laboratories. Nirav, what about you in terms of individual stock futures? What are you betting on?
Yeah, just to add on to what Ashish said, my first pick was also Tata Elxsi, but really ran up quite aggressively today. The reason being, the open interest was very light during rollover, so a lot of long positions were built in, during the course of these 2-3 days, even today. So I really like Tata Elxsi as well, but at this point, it has really run up. So if it comes down, buy again. The stock that I picked after Tata Elxsi was NIIT Tech. See, NIIT Tech also has a similar pattern. It has been consolidating and the open interest in rollovers have been very low. So definitely, there is good space for open interest to increase, and longs have been seen in this counter. I believe this counter is likely to move up towards the 1560, 1570 odd levels in this expiry. For the next 2-3 days, the 1530, 35 levels are very likely. So you can buy with that target. The stop loss for the same would be 1470. You can buy on dips as well. The second stock on my buying radar is Siemens. You see Siemens, after a huge fall from sub 1750 odd levels, it seems to have consolidated in between 1460, 1470 odd levels. Inside candle has been made there as well on a weekly. That is a good sign. So I believe Siemens can be bought into. Also, it was very heavy on open interest. So a lot of shorts have been built in into Siemens, and you'll see a little bit of covering coming in now with Siemens coming up. So that covering can push Siemens towards the 1540, 1550 odd levels. So buy this stock at current levels. The stop loss would be 1465. Possible targets around 1530, 1550.
Okay, well, there you have it. And of course, we must remember that Siemens has been one of those outperforming stocks on a year-to-date basis. It did come off to a certain extent after the earnings came and perhaps disappointed the stock, but it seems like it may very well be back on its road to recovery. It's had a stellar year. There you have it. It's about 42% gains this year. But let's move on and talk about a handful of stocks that we intend to address. Well, needless to say, at least as far as the F&O stocks are concerned, I did want to also address Tata Elxsi, but both our experts have already spoken about it. So let's also take up, something like a Reliance Industries. Now, some very, very interesting moves coming in for Reliance Industries. Of course, besides the fact that it snapped a 2-day decline, we have seen a lot of interest essentially on the back of what's happening in the telecommunications sector as a whole. Reliance Communications, it's Reliance Industries and Reliance Jio specifically in this case has come up with new tariffs, a new tariff plan, and which is why we've had a handful of brokerages which have also increased the price target quite substantially. CLSA specifically in this case has increased its price target to somewhere around 2,000 from an earlier price target of around 1,700, which means that at least one brokerage believes that there is much more upside at current levels. And it's not doing too much in today's day of trade. We haven't seen, very surprisingly, too much of a reaction, especially after it's come out with some firm plans in terms of its tariff hikes. But we are seeing a tremendous rise anyway. It's one of those stocks that you can say has gotten into a lot of momentum, specifically in the last 3 odd months. So Ashish, I'll take this question up with you. Where do we go in Reliance Industries? More room for upside?
So Reliance, I think, is in a very strong traction, and as I'm mentioning, if index has to move, Reliance should contribute positively on upside. And after the consolidation of last couple of few trading sessions, I think the next up move, one can extend this move extending towards 1650, 1660 area. I think there was a gap up opening on 20th November. So basically, the lows of that particular day, 1515, is ideally a strong support area, which one should keep as an trading stop loss for going long into Reliance Industries.
Okay, so long-term view remains positive. And remember, when the stock was down yesterday, your delivery your delivery data was somewhere about 48% compared to the total traded quantity yesterday, telling you there is a lot more cash-based buying happening into this heavyweight Reliance Industries. Okay, let's move on and talk about Ujjivan Financial. It's a small finance bank. IPO closed yesterday and the subscription numbers looked stellar. In fact, the subscription that we've seen for this IPO has actually surpassed the response that we had also seen for IRCTC, which was subscribed nearly 110 times. So on back of which the stock did see long positions yesterday as well. It was up 4%. Today it's a muted day, but there is some bit of OI build-up definitely seen, up 6%. Nirav, even Equitas actually rallied in yesterday's session. They were long seen for both these stocks. Which one of these on the charts is looking better according to you?
Definitely Ujjivan. See, Equitas still has a lot of shorts left in the system. Also, from a technical perspective, it has approached a resistance area of around 110. Unless that is broken, Equitas might not really move that fast. While for Ujjivan, it has broken out above a very, very important level of about 320. There was a channel kind of a formation, which is where it broke that level. And from there, some aggressive buying has been seen with volumes for Ujjivan. So definitely I'll be a buyer in Ujjivan. I think, it has got considerable upside left. The first resistance now comes for Ujjivan around the 370, which was the previous top, which is not a very big resistance, but I believe it can move up towards the 400, 420 odd levels in the coming time. So definitely, buying Ujjivan at this point of time makes sense. From a trading perspective, if someone is buying for a 2-3 day perspective, one can keep a stop loss of around 338 for longs and keep a target of around 370. From a 2-3 month perspective, 400 should be the target.
Okay, that's Ujjivan Financial Services, and from there on, let's talk about Titan Company. What's really happened with Titan is that, well, after we had some updates with respect to results, it came off quite substantially. In fact, it fell to levels of around 1150. This was before it was trading at around 1300 rupees per share. Well, and over the past 21 odd days, what it's done is it's moved within a very, very narrow range. 40 for 50 odd point range on the higher into the lower end. But what is now happening is this is just rearing up ever so slightly now in the past couple of sessions. So it's up only 1% today, but there is a lot of interest, open interest increase of around 7.5% right now. So the question is, what do you do, and can you take this as pardon me, an opportunity to perhaps go long? Is this a signal, Ashish, that there's a possibility of an up move here?
So, after a sharp correction, stock was consolidating for almost last 3-4 weeks, and then there's some uptake. But the challenge is this stock has seen one big gap down opening on 6th of November, and generally we have seen that it takes really a lot of time and challenge for any stock to fill the gap. Once the gap gets filled, then a renewed buying interest sets in. But definitely as a trading bet, I think yes, some upside is possible. Maybe a move towards 1225, 1230 could not be ruled out, and for that I think the base is very clear, so your risk reward is favorable with a stop around 1170, 1168 zone. But the point is whether this is going to turn into a sustainable uptrend. For that, I need some more confirmation, and that will be typically on the filling of this gap.
Sure.
Okay, that's Titan for you. Though outperforming when the markets were seeing some bit of selling pressure at higher levels. In the last 7 days, at least, it has given you some returns. Just want to highlight Z, that's up about 4%, and also how Dish TV has been rallying for the last 2 sessions. Yesterday, also, Dish TV gained about 15 to 16%. Z right now is up 4%. No major gains, however, right now seen for Dish. Nirav, I know these are high beta stocks, very difficult to trade into. It can result into a wild swing that you get to see on back of some news as well. But would you trade into something like Z, which has just seen selling pressure in the last few trading days?
Yeah. See, at this point of time, trading in Z is a little difficult, as you said, but definitely until and unless it is, closing above the 275 levels, the short-term trend is still positive. it can come up towards the 320 odd levels, 320-25 odd levels. So for that target, one can go long with a stop loss of around 275. However, you've got to see if there is a gap up or a gap down. When there is a big gap up or a gap down, do the reverse, and probably you make a good amount of money with stop losses in place. For Dish TV, see, at this point of time, the trend is negative. Definitely negative. It has been falling from 80 odd levels, making a lower top, lower bottom formation. But if I have to take a really short term trend, then that trend on the candlestick, it is positive. Believe it or not, it is positive. The volumes are there. I take out all the news aside, just look at the technicals. Looks like Dish TV at this point of time can hit the 17-18 levels. So I'll be a buyer, a better buyer in Dish TV at this point. With a stop loss of 12 and a possible target of around 17. I'll be getting out at 17, whatever comes. 17 is a strong resistance for this stock. So, if you're buying, please just book out around the 17 areas.
Okay, we have a question from Anand, and he wants a view on M&M December futures. He intends to buy it at 530, which is around about where it's currently trading at. Spot is at 528, the December futures at 529.65 to be precise. Not too much happening in futures, but Ashish, a view here?
So M&M is very sideways. I think only silver lining is that the stock made recently lows in September at close to around 500 area, and now after uptick till 625, again it has retraced back to those support zones. So ideally, only thing is that it is near that important support area.
Right.
Whether it will hold or not, I think the only challenge is a stock which has not performed in a market where index has hit an all-time high with a very strong contribution coming from many names. I think it could be just be a pullback trade, but no major sign of any strong reversals.
Okay, that's the view on M&M. Ashish, I'm going to come back to you. Excuse me. Both our experts have given views in Nifty, but Bank Nifty is something which recovered sharply yesterday, and one of our viewers wants to know if there is any strategy to deploy on this expiry day and also ahead of the RBI meet.
That will be a little tricky, but only thing I would suggest is that the data clearly suggests that there is a lot of strength within Bank Nifty, and particularly because of names like ICICI, Kotak and SBI. If you're on the long side of Bank Nifty, ideally you should keep 31,850 as a trading stop loss, because it's RBI policy data day. So I think there can be some volatility. So 31,850 should be the stop loss, but I'm expecting Bank Nifty to see 32,400, 32,500 kind of zone.
Okay. Well, there's another stock that I want to address, and that's Adani Ports. Now, we all know that there's been a lot of traction in the Adani Group stocks of late and towards the gaining end. But I was talking to a couple of viewers, and they are of the opinion, in fact, if you actually take a 1 year, view of Adani Ports, it's very hard to discern a trend here, because every time it moves very sharply, and it's not always that you are able to make out your short-term trends. And as you can see on your screen, that through the last 12 months, it may have given you returns of, well, a decline of 2%, but on the other hand, it's also gyrated between 320 on the lower end to 420 on the higher end. That's a 50% move, and I know a lot of stocks do that, but it's just that for this particular stock it happens a little more often. So Nirav, if you could actually perhaps simplify Adani Ports for us, that's one thing, and how do you read into something like this? What would you do?
Yeah, so what you told about Adani Ports makes a lot of sense. 1 year, if you take a 15-month perspective, it has remained in between 430 odd on the upside and about 350 on the downside, with only about a few days or weeks it has remained below the 350 odd levels. So more or less 350 becomes a strong support on the downside. Whenever it comes towards this area, it witnesses buying. And one thing to note here for Adani Ports is, whenever it comes to a support zone, you don't see a lot of volume built up. So it generally moves up without volumes, generally comes down without volumes. Volumes are average, not high volumes. So at this point of time, it is near the support zone. And selling at this point doesn't make sense, so definitely look for buying. Buying should be done if a close is got above the 375 odd levels. Once this 375 is crossed above, definitely it is going towards the 430 425 odd zone, so buy with a stop loss of around 350 for your longs.
Fair enough. Well, on that note, we will leave it at that. So I'm just going to take a moment to thank both our experts, Ashish and Nirav, for joining us and taking us through their views and solving a whole host of viewer queries. For more updates on the F&O space, you can also check our futures and options pages on BloombergQuint.com.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the F&O Show, and thanks a lot for watching. But our special coverage on the monetary policy starts at 11:30 a.m. Don't forget to tune in.